Welcome back to that 70s Card Show. I am your host, John Keating, and I thank you for joining me as I take a trip back to the cards and the culture of the very colorful 1970s. Just going to get right to it here. If you are listening, I appreciate it as usual. Also, I have expanded in recent weeks or the past month into YouTube, so if you want to watch, I am on that 70s Card Show on the YouTube, where there are some enhanced visual aids for your viewing pleasure. So this is going to be episode 23, and it is a little more grim than you might expect, but the intention is not there for it to be grim. We're going to talk about some players in the 1970s baseball game that died during their careers in the 70s. It's nothing new to sports and nothing new to baseball, certainly, but what I found fascinating, obviously I remember a lot of them happening, as they happen, kind of happen. There were some big names that passed away in the 70s, and I remember some of them vividly. I remember some of them not so vividly, and there's some that I had not known about at all. And as usual, this podcast is not meant to preach or speak down to you guys. This is more of a exercise for me to educate myself on many things: cards, sports, and the culture, particularly of the 70s. So in the 70s, there were 11 players who passed away to various circumstances, and what I find interesting about that is, as I said, I remember a lot of them, but it's tied for the most, I guess, since baseball started in the late 1800s, tied with the first decade of the 20th century, the 1900s, 1900 to 1909. 11 people also perished. Little bit of a different story in the 1970s. In the 1900s, there was a suicide cut by his own throat. There was tuberculosis, pneumonia, swept one guy, Ed Delahunty, who is of course, a Hall of Famer, was swept over Niagara Falls. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but it's a very interesting way to die as a professional athlete. And so on and so forth. Oddly enough, the 1910s, as war raged in Europe, there was only one athlete. I think Ralph Sharman, baseball player for the Philadelphia Athletics, died while swimming over during military training for World War One. And in the 1940s, as far as I can tell, there was only one player who died in World War II, and his name was Elmer Gideon. He was an outfielder for the Washington Senators. It says he was killed during World War II serving in the United States Armed Forces. So, the 1970s, a couple big ones, and quite a few that you probably have not heard of. So, again, if you are watching, I have some visual aids for you here, and we're just going to get right to it here. I'm going to bring up some visual aids, some cards that will. These are cards that I have in my collection that represent the players in the 70s. There may be more cards that they have, but these are the ones that popped up that show that I have in my collection. They aren't copies of my collection because that would be cumbersome. I just swiped them off of the internet. So I will bring up quite a few players here, a cornucopia of players. First guy I'm going to talk about is Paul Edmondson, who was a pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, represented in the 1970 Topps series. A full solo card there. Paul Edmondson was born in 1943, passed away February 13th, 1970, a day after his 27th birthday. Apparently, Paul was kind of again, 27 years old, had a major league record of 1-6, ERA of 3.70, and pitched 87 and 2/3 innings for the 69 White Sox. I guess destined to be a journeyman. He was picked in the first ever amateur draft in 1965, I believe, the 21st round, 419th overall. He pitched I guess the highlight of his career was in June 20th, 1969, pitched a complete game two-hitter in 9-1 White Sox victory over the California Angels. Paul was a California guy through and through, even though he pitched for the White Sox. Started 13 of the 14 games he appeared in during his major league career. Paul was killed on a rain-soaked U.S. Route 101 near Santa Barbara, which was his hometown. The day after his 27th birthday, it also killed his passenger, Lorraine Leas, 22, of Simi Valley. They were traveling from Simi Valley to San Luis Obispo, where I believe Lorraine was going to attend college, and Paul was preparing for spring training with the White Sox. I guess the hopes were that he would be the fourth pitcher in that pitching rotation. Paul Edmondson died at the age of 27 in 1970. We are going to move on to Miguel Fuentes of Loaza, Aldea, Puerto Rico. He was born there in 1946 and perished there in 1970. Not quite 24 years old. Miguel is represented in the 1970 set by a 1970 rookie star card with the Pilots. Shares a card with Dick Bainey, also a pitcher for those Pilots. So Miguel was on the Pilots roster when they expanded the rosters back in the day in September of 1969. He was called up. He had a 1-3 record with a 5.19 ERA for the last place Pilots, and he holds the distinction of being the final pitcher used in Pilots history. He pitched a scoreless ninth inning during their last game before moving to Milwaukee, so he never made it to Milwaukee, obviously. Unfortunately, Miguel was shot in a bar fight in his hometown of Puerto Rico. Apparently, he went outside to relieve himself. The plumbing wasn't working inside. A gentleman took umbrage to how close he did so to his car, and he was shot 3 times, unfortunately, and probably the end of a career before it had even gotten started. Again, he pitched 1 year, or essentially 1 month, 8 games for the Pilots in September of 1969, and the final pitcher in Seattle Pilots history. All right, we are going to move on next to Herman Hill. Herman Hill is also represented by a 1970s Rookie Stars Twins card, and he shares that with Paul Ratliff, a catcher. Herman Hill was an outfielder. Born in Tuskegee, Alabama. I believe he grew up in North Jersey. He spent part of 2 seasons with the Twins, mostly as a pinch runner. Kind of again, there was hope that he would flourish, but it's hard to look. You look at his stats here. He had 16 games in 1969. 70 games in 1970, 27 games in 1970, a grand total of 8 hits. A grand total of 2 hits in his career for a batting average of .083. Herman was playing winter ball in Venezuela. On a day off, he went swimming with a couple of teammates and his wife, and he was pulled out to the sea by a powerful wave. Despite his teammates' efforts to rescue him, he did perish in the sea. He was 25 years old and noted for his speed and athleticism. It's a shame that both his teammates and his wife had to witness his death at sea. He had been traded, I believe, with a fellow minor leaguer to the St. Louis Cardinals for Sal Campisi and Jim Kennedy. He never did play for the Cardinals. Again, playing winter ball, he passed away while swimming at that sea. I would guess that would be the Caribbean Sea or maybe the Atlantic Ocean. Moving on now to Danny Thompson. Danny Thompson is represented several times. Looks like six cards from the 70s. We have his 1971 Twins card, second base shortstop, the 1972 Twins card, 73, 74, 75, and 76. A nice pose on the 76 card, just kind of standing there, leaning on his bat, hand on hip. Danny Thompson was born February 1st, 1947 in Wichita, Kansas, and he died December 10th, 1976. He was 29 years old. Made his big league debut in June of 1970 as a 23-year-old. Went 0 for 4, and his last game was October 2nd, 1976. Danny was part of a trade with Bert Blyleven, sent to the Texas Rangers in June of 1976 for Bill Singer, Roy Smalley Jr., and Mike Cubbage, and another player, Jim Gideon, I believe, and $250,000 cash. Blyleven apparently was kicking up some dust, didn't like the way he was treated or being paid, so demanded a trade to the Rangers. Danny Thompson played in a lot of games, 694 games in his 7 years, 550 hits, a lifetime average of 248, 15 homers, 194 RBIs. In 1973, during a pre-season routine physical, he was called in for additional tests and diagnosed with leukemia. So that was February 73. But he continued to play in his major league career for the next 4 seasons and was awarded baseball's annual Hutch Award in Seattle following the 74 season. Batted .270 in 1975, led All-American League shortstops. Thompson appeared in 98 games in 76, went 1 for 3 in his final start for the Rangers on September 29th. Appropriately, he was at that game was at Minnesota's Metropolitan Stadium, where he had played most of his career. So, final game, October 2nd, less than 10 weeks before his death. He was used as a pinch hitter. He was admitted to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota on November 16th, 1976, and he underwent spleen surgery and died a week later from complications in Rochester's St. Mary's Hospital. He was 29. He left behind a wife, Jo, and 2 young daughters, Tracy and Dana. Obviously, his funeral was attended by many, and he's buried in a cemetery in his hometown of Capitan, Oklahoma. So Danny Thompson, age 29, passed away December 10th, 1976, of leukemia, represented by 6 cards, 71 through 76. All right, moving on next to Danny Frizella. Danny Frizella was kind of a journeyman pitcher. His nickname was the Bear. He was born March 4th, 1946 in San Francisco and passed away January 1st, 1977 on New Year's Day, 77. Man, this is a interesting way to perish, but we'll get to that in a second. Danny had a 10-year career in the majors as a relief pitcher. Remember back then in the 70s, late 60s, they were just getting around to, in the 60s, recording saves, and 70s giving out awards for Fireman of the Year and such. But most of Danny's career was with the New York Mets from 67 to 72. In his career, he pitched 351 games and recorded 51 saves. So although he was on that 1969 Mets team, he didn't really contribute. He only appeared in 3 games. I think he spent a lot of time in the minors. His best season with the Mets was in 71 when he posted a 1.99 ERA. Danny was killed in a dune buggy accident on January 1st, 1977. Probably would have pitched for a few more years, it says here. And in his last year, he was the closer for the Milwaukee Brewers in 76, leading the team with 9 saves and a 2.74 ERA as a reliever. And it was also Hank Aaron, obviously, his last year in the majors with the Brewers. Yeah, so that dune buggy accident, his friend was driving the dune buggy, and his friend escaped with only minor injuries. Apparently, there was a rollover incident in the dune buggy within a couple 50 yards, it says here, of Frizella's home. Friend lost control of the dune buggy, overturned. Frizella tried to jump out, but was pinned beneath the dune buggy and perished. He was survived by his wife Pamela and two sons, and Pamela was pregnant with the couple's second son at the time of Frizella's death. He was born on March 4th, which would have been Frizella's 31st birthday. Frizella served with the Army, with the Air National Guard during his major league career. Um, Again, another tragedy. Nearly 31 years old, 30 years old. Had some more years in him. 351 games, 34 and 40 record. Career saves, as we said, 57. 6 years with the Mets, 2 years with the Braves, 1 year with the Cardinals, 1 year with the Padres, and 1 year with the Milwaukee Brewers. Frizella is represented on our board here by a 75 card with the Padres, a 76 card with the Padres, and a 77 card with the Brewers. Darn shame there. And the last of our opening salvo here is Mike Miley. Mike Miley was from Louisiana, went to LSU, born on March 30th, 1953, and perished on January 6th, 1978, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Mike Miley was a shortstop for the Angels, so we have his 76 and his 77 cards here. 76 looking good, nice clean cut. 77, he brought the mustache. Before that, before shortstopping for the Angels, he was the starting quarterback for LSU during the 1973 season, and he played in the 1974 Orange Bowl for LSU, losing 16-9 to Penn State. He was a first-round pick of the California Angels in the 1974 draft, so obviously he was typical, one of those really strong athletes all around, just natural athletes that could go either way in each sport there. Had a good minor league career there, hit for some power, hit for some average as a shortstop, and then got called up to the majors. He made his debut July 6, 1975. His final game was October 3rd, 1976, and he, I guess he that was another one of those late call-ups, September call-ups. He also played for the Santurce Cravers in the Puerto Rican Winter Baseball League. Mike Miley died in a car accident in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on January 6, 1977, again at the age of 23. 84 big league games, all with the Angels, and a 176 batting average for his major league career. Mike Miley of the Angels, shortstop. All right, so we're going to kind of get into a little some more familiar names here. Maybe we've heard of. I know I have. Next, first guy I'm going to talk about is Bob Moos. Bob Moos obviously was a Pittsburgh Pirate. He was a Yinzer through and through. Born in Export, PA, October 9th, 1947. So Bob represented here on our screen with 70 card, 71 card, 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76 card, all with the Pirates. Nice action shot of him in 1975. I don't know about you guys, but those mustard yellow hats, that era was my favorite Pirates uniform when they wore those mustard colored hats. Bob Moos looked a little ragged there in 1974, a little too much culture he was enjoying perhaps with the long hair. Anyway, Bob kind of vacillated between being a starter and a reliever before the Pirates had a nice career. 160 games started, 289 games total. Career record of 76 and 71. 13 shutouts, also 19 saves. So he had a quite a career there. He was famous. He pitched a no-hitter for the Pirates against the New York Mets on September 20th, 1969. A little bit more about Bob. We'll get him from the beginning here. So he started in the majors less than a week after. I'm sorry, less than a week after graduating from high school. He became a professional, and he joined the Pirates farm team in Salem, Virginia, which is right near Blacksburg, Virginia, home of the Virginia Tech Hokies. He made his major league debut September 9th, 1967, against the Astros, and the Astros beat him up a little bit in the Astrodome. 10 days later, pitching at home in Forbes Field, he got revenge by pitching a complete game victory over the Astros. He was 19 years old in the 67, and pitching a complete game. 69 was pretty memorable. Like I said, he pitched a no-hitter, and that was against the Mets in the middle of their legendary World Series drive. 21-year-old pitcher no-hit them on the road at Shea Stadium against the team that would eventually be the world champions. That month he was 5-1, 3 complete games, including that no-hitter, as well as a save. Moos finished the year with a 14-3 record, averaging a strikeout an inning while limiting hitters to 7.9 hits per 9 innings. He carried a team low 2.91 ERA for starters, and his .824 winning percentage was the highest in the league. One thing that didn't help Moos's consistency was his participation in the Marine Corps Reserve. He had to lead the Pirates a couple weeks every season, and also some weekend action as well, and undoubtedly had something to do with being shuttled between starting and relieving. But so, it's a testament to him. He was trying to keep his head in the game and his body healthy while also serving his country. Something that was clearly wrong with Bob Moos at the onset of the 74 season. He didn't have his stuff, and it showed quickly. Through 6 starts and 1 relief appearance, he was 1-5 with a 7.57 ERA. He had displayed abnormal swelling and discoloration in his pitching arm. In late May, a blood clot was found in his shoulder. Emergency surgery removed the clot, along with one of his ribs. After the surgery, he was told he would never pitch again. He didn't pitch again in 74, but vowed to be back next year, showing the bulldog-like determination that his teammates admired. Just after the 76 season ended on October 9th, Pirate Hall of Famer Bill Mazeroski held a party for the Pirates players at his golf course in eastern Ohio. On the way to the party, Bob Moos lost control of his Corvette and ran into an oncoming car. Police reports indicate that Moos was driving too fast for the rainy conditions. 2 young women in the car with Moos were injured, and 2 other people in the other car had slight injury. Bob Moos died at the scene. It was his 29th birthday. He left his high school sweetheart a widow, along with his 4-year-old daughter, April. So, Bob Moos, 71 World Series champion for the Pirates, war number 38 for the Buccos. All right, we are going to move on now here to another tragedy, obviously. This is Don Wilson. Don Wilson was a pitcher for the Astros. I was always fascinated with his cards. He had a couple of really great cards in the 70s. He started out 1970. Then we have the 71, 72. I have a 72 ERA leaders card that he shares with Tom Seaver and Dave Roberts. 3-way card there. 73 card and a 74 card and a 75 card. The 74 card and the 75 card are different photographs altogether, but they feature essentially the same pose, with Don looking over his right shoulder with a big old smile. My memories of Don Wilson were the 75 card, that smile, as well as the 72 card. He kind of had a pleasant look on his face with that 72 card. So, digging further into Don's story, just as tragic as the other ones. Don was born February 12th, 1945, and passed away January 5th, 1975, just shy, obviously, of his 30th birthday party. Let's see here. He was raised in Compton, California, and drafted or signed by the Colt 45s from Houston in 1964. He was briefly in the minor leagues and was brought up to the majors in September 66. Pitched a game for 6 innings and garnered 7 strikeouts. So the Astros are a little iffy back then. They were more famous for their stadium and their playing surface than for the product on the field. Young team, though, had Joe Morgan, who was a year older, Rusty Staub, a year older, Jimmy Wynn was 3 years older, and Larry Durker was even younger than Wilson was at the time. So young team, a lot of fits and giggles, but really a lot of those players, actually all those players came into their own eventually. So Wilson was already a regular in the pitching rotation as a rookie in 67 at the age of 22 and threw a no-hitter that first year. The next year in 68, he had a game with 18 strikeouts, tying what was then the record. 2 months later, he struck out 16 in a game. In July of that year, a wild Don Drysdale in a 0-0 game walked 2 Houston batters, hit a batter, and then hit Wilson to drive in the only run of the game. So that's 2 walks, a hit batter, and then you hit the pitcher, and you lose 1-0. That's Don Drysdale. He's in the Hall of Fame. 69, Don Wilson threw another no-hitter on the day after Houston had been no-hit by Jim Maloney. I think that's happened twice in history. It might even have happened in the same season. One team no-hits the other, and the other comes back and no-hits them the next day. That's why we love sports, right? It has a lot of cool things like that. So in 71, Don Wilson became an all-star. In May of 1971, Don Wilson hit a bunt double. His bunt was towards the shortstop, but Larry Bowa, the shortstop, had already started moving towards third base, and the ball went past. So a bunt double for Don Wilson against my beloved Philadelphia Phillies. In 74, he pitched 8 no-hit innings, but was removed from the game at that point for a pinch hitter by Preston Gomez, with Houston trailing 2-1. I believe they would end up losing the game, those Houston Astros. So let's get to the sad conclusion of Don Wilson's life. It's still shrouded in mystery. Wilson was found unresponsive in the passenger seat of his car in his garage. The car ignition was on, but the car was off. The gas tank was empty. He had died from carbon monoxide poisoning. His son Alex, who was upstairs in his bedroom, also died, and his daughter Denise survived after spending several days in a coma with some brain damage, from what I can gather. So Don, who knows what happened? His blood alcohol was twice the legal limit. There's still some mystery shrouded in the circumstances of his death. Perhaps you could do some reading on your own, but I'm not going to interpret all of it because it's truly a tragedy, for sure. So Don Wilson was an all-star in 71. He had 3 15-win seasons. He pitched 200 innings 6 times and had a 200 strikeout season in 1969. Again, a career record 104.92. ERA was 3.15. 78 complete games career-wise, 20 shutouts, and 1,283 strikeouts. Don was, like I said, a one-time All-Star. He wore number 23 and number 40 for the Houston Astros, and made his debut September 29th, 1966 at the age of 21, and his last game was September 28th at the age of 29 in 1974. Again, he probably had a good 5 years ahead of him, and he was just kind of, the pitchers kind of reached hit their stride, late 20s, early 30s. So, for Don Wilson and his son, tragic end to a bright future. The next player I'm going to talk about is fascinating. I have always been fascinated with him from the moment I heard about his story, which was probably as a 10-year-old when it all went down. He may not be known to most, but to me, I've always thought of him as a kind of a unique name. His name is Lyman Bostock, and Lyman was again, he was he like a lot of these guys had a very bright future, but I don't think anybody had as bright a future as this character did. He was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and he was the son of Annie Pearl Bostock and Lyman Bostock Sr. Lyman Bostock Sr. played in the Negro Leagues from 1938 to 1954 as a first baseman. So he had some heritage there. He had some, obviously, some skill that was handed down to him from his father. His parents split when he was a young child, and Pearl located with her son first to Gary, Indiana, and we'll get back to Gary in a few, and then eventually to Los Angeles. There's a story of Lyman when he was young. His baseball glove was stolen, and his mother was unable to afford another one at the moment, so he had to borrow one from a family friend. However, it was a left-handed glove, and he was a right-handed fielder, so he wore that left-handed glove on his right hand and proceeded to make every catch like it was a basket catch, and that was a habit that would stay with him throughout his career. So all developed because of that left-handed glove. I guess the right glove being on his left hand. So that's pretty much his youth there. He played baseball in Los Angeles in high school, and then attended San Fernando Valley State College, now known as Cal State Northridge, CSUN. Was there that he met the woman that would become his wife. He didn't play baseball for the first 2 years of college. He wanted to concentrate on his studies and student activism. And again, this is the early 70s, and nonetheless, he was selected in the 1970 amateur draft by the Cardinals. Bostock decided not to sign. He stayed in college and played baseball for his college team, the Matadors. He was an all-conference player in the CCAA, the California Collegiate Athletic Association, in both his seasons, and hit .344 as a junior and .296 as a senior, leading the Matadors to a second-place finish at the Division II College World Series in 1972. He was selected by the Twins in the 26th round, a number 596 overall, in the 72 amateur draft, and decided to turn pro. He was 15 credits short of finishing his bachelor's degree, and I think that meant a lot to him. Lyman, from what I gather, was a very cerebral person with very idealistic ways of thinking. He seemed to put others before him. So, like we said there, Lyman gets drafted by the Twins org, minor league stops in Charlotte, Double A in Orlando, and Triple A in Tacoma. That's the Charlotte Twins, the Orlando Twins, and the Tacoma Twins. Very original. His batting averages those 3 years were .294, .313, and .333, respectively. In 1975, he was hitting .391 after 22 games and 92 at bats with Tacoma when the Minnesota Twins called him up. He was promoted in April of '75 and made his debut on April 8th when he went 1 for 4 with 2 walks and 3 runs in a 11-4 Twins win over the Texas Rangers. And for that season, he batted .282 in 98 games for Minnesota. And if you factor in the 22 games he played for Tacoma, that's also .391 he batted as well. Fine defensive center fielder, it says here. He finished 4th in the tight American League batting race in 1976, his first full season in the majors. He hit .323, which had him behind George Brett at .333, Hal McRae at .332, and his teammate, Hall of Famer Rod Carew, at .331. Bostock hit for the cycle on July 24th of that year in a 17-2 Twins victory over the Chicago White Sox. I think I spoke about this in my 76 Tops review. So he was 4 for 4, 4 RBIs, and 4 runs scored for Bostock that game. Pretty impressive. In 77, he hit .366, and it was second only to Rod Carew, his teammate. May 25th of that year, he collected 12 putouts in the second game of a doubleheader against the Boston Braves, which tied a major league record for putouts by an outfielder. which had been set by Earl Clark of the Boston Braves in 1929 and was equaled by Jacoby Ellsbury in 2009. Bostic had a total of 17 putouts in the doubleheader, which set an American League record for outfielders. 77 season ended. Bostic became one of baseball's early big money free agents. He signed with the California Angels, which was owned obviously by Gene Autry. Bostic had made $20,000 with the Twins in 77 and signed a $2.3 million 6-year contract with the Angels. Pretty hefty raise for Lyman, and well-deserved. The Twins, Padres, and Yankees had all tried to sign Bostic. Almost immediately, Bostic donated $10,000 to a church in his native Birmingham, Alabama, to rebuild its Sunday school. Again, idealistic, altruistic. Seemed like a good guy all around. Here's a fun anecdote about Lyman. In 78, he started off poorly, batting 150 for the month of April. He met with team's management and attempted to return his April salary, saying he did not earn it. The team refused, so Bostic announced he would donate his April salary to charity. So as the 78 season neared its conclusion, Bostic was leading the Angels in batting. With a week remaining in the season, he went 2 for 4 with a walk in his final game, a Saturday afternoon game against the White Sox in Chicago that raised his season average to 296. And this is where it starts to go horribly wrong. Following that game in Chicago, as was his custom, Bostic visited his uncle Thomas Turner in nearby Gary, Indiana. After eating a meal with a group of relatives at Turner's home, Bostic and his uncle went to visit Joan Hawkins, a woman who Bostic had tutored as a teenager, but who he had not seen for several years. After the visit, Turner agreed to give Hawkins and her sister Barbara Smith a ride to her cousin's house. Turner, the uncle, drove the vehicle with Hawkins seated in the front passenger seat, while Bostic and Barbara Smith rode in the back seat. Barbara Smith had been living with Hawkins while estranged from her husband, Leonard Smith. Unbeknownst to the group, Leonard Smith was outside Hawkins' home in his car and observed the group's departure in Turner's car. According to Leonard Smith, his wife was frequently unfaithful to him, and though he did not know Bostic, he later said that upon seeing Bostic get into the back seat of Turner's vehicle with his wife, he concluded the two were having an affair. Following a stop at a traffic signal, Leonard Smith pulled up and opened fire with one blast from a .410 caliber shotgun, where Bostic and Barbara Smith were seated. Leonard Smith said that the lethal wrath was intended for his estranged wife. However, Bostic was seated between Barbara Smith and the position from which Leonard Smith was firing. Instead of striking her, the blast caught Bostic squarely in the right temple. At the age of 27, he died 2 hours later at Gary Hospital, and Barbara Smith was hospitalized in fair condition with pellet wounds. Again, tragic, mistaken identity or mistaken rage for a guy who was just spending time with his family as well as somebody he had previously tutored. 27 years old, just his whole career was ahead of him. A bit of a light bloomer, but man, this cat would have done some heavy work in the big leagues had he kept going. After he was murdered, he was still listed in the top 10 hitters in the league each day in the newspapers until nearly the last day. At the end of the season, it turned out that the 10th hitter in the league, Thurman Munson, batted .297, so that's 1 point higher than Bostic. And sadly, Munson's life would also end before his time as well. And anyway, despite the shortened season, Bostic still finished 4th in the league in singles and 6th in the league in intentional walks. He was deprived of playing for the 79 Angels, who would win the AL West for the first time in their history. Let's talk a little bit about Lyman. Lyman, as you can see there, got a 76 Twins card, got a 77 Twins card, onto the Angels, a little airbrushing in 78. And I have a Hostess, I believe it's a 77 Hostess, Lyman Bostic, Minnesota Twins card. again, I remember when it happened, and I was touched by it when it happened, and I'm even more touched um, this late in my life. He was 27 years old. Um, just a tragedy. He had 624 career hits, 526 games, 102 doubles, 23 homers, 250 RBIs, and a career batting average of 311. He wore number 10 for both the Minnesota Twins and the California Angels. Not quite sure when Rod Carew migrated over to California, but it wasn't that much uh, longer. It wasn't that much after Lyman did. It would have been a great team there with Don Baylor as well. Uh, True shame. So yeah, moving on. We spoke a little bit about number 10 in the 1978 batting race, and here he is, the captain of the Yankees, Thurman Munson. We all know about Thurman Munson. Legendary player, had cards in all 10 seasons of the 70s. His rookie card, 1970, he shares with Dave McDonald. Uh, Legendary 1971 card with the rookie cup, horizontal picture sliding into the base, action photo, great shot. 72, he had two cards, the base set as well as the inaction card. 73, another great inaction card. 74, 75, 76. See a big beard there on Thurman Munson. Usually that was not allowed for New York Yankees, but that's a whole other story. Also have his 76 batting leaders card with the aforementioned Rod Carew, Fred Lynn, and Thurman Munson. Bit of an anomaly there. When I was growing up, catchers were expected to bat 228 and catch a good game. And him and Bench were probably the exceptions of that. Thurman hit for average, real good average for a catcher in the 70s. 77 card there, big smiling Thurman Munson with the AL All-Star banner below. Another action shot, 78, of the captain, kind of checking out his setup there at Yankee Stadium, and 79, kind of a sublime send-off final card for Munson. As we know, Topps typically did not do career retrospective cards for players that passed. I don't know whether that was out of respect or legality, but or just wasn't allowed by the Players Association. But we didn't get a lot of career cards from the players. So let's talk a little bit about Thurman Munson, right? The Yankees captain. He was a shortstop in high school, and he only began catching. This is in Ohio. He only began catching because no one else on the team could handle catching. Future minor leaguer Jerome Pruitt. After his high school junior season, he attended a tryout camp for the Pittsburgh Pirates in Columbus, Ohio, home of their AAA team, the Columbus Jets, but was not signed. He was highly recruited as a football player, getting interest from powerhouses such as Ohio State University, University of Michigan, and Syracuse University, but only received 3 offers for baseball despite hitting .581 and being named shortstop on the All-Ohio team. Arizona State University and Ohio University offered scholarships based on him making the team, but Kent State University offered him a full ride, so that's where he would go. The Yankees drafted Munson 4th overall in the 1968 amateur draft. He did agree to forego his senior year at Kent State, where he would later be honored by having his number 15 retired, the only number retired by the school, and was named to the school's Hall of Fame in 1979. So Munson only played 99 games in the minors, missed most of the 1969 season due to military commitments. I don't know whether that was better than or worse than being in the minor leagues, but just so happened that he got all that out at the same time. 1970, Thurman hit .302 for the Yankees and appeared in 132 games and was named the American League Rookie of the Year. Let's fast forward a little bit to 1976. The Yankees moved back to Yankee Stadium, and Munson was named the 6th captain in team history, I believe the first since Lou Gehrig some 30 years prior, possibly 40 years prior, I guess that would be. So he proved his value to the team by hitting .309 with 17 home runs and 105 RBIs, and was named the American League Most Valuable Player in 1976. Yankees made the playoffs for the first time in 12 years and the first time in Munson's career that year. In the ALCS against the Kansas City Royals, he hit .435, 3 RBIs, and to help the Yankees win the pennant in 5 games. They moved on to play the Cincinnati Reds in the '76 World Series, and the Yankees struggled and were swept in 4 games, scoring only 7 runs in the entire series against the Big Red Machine. Munson handled the pressure of the World Series by hitting .529 and second only to the series MVP, Johnny Bench. Keep in mind, 1976 Reds were the greatest offensive team in baseball history, leading the league in every category. I'm not saying the National League, I'm sorry, leading the majors in every offensive category except stolen bases. You can look that up. That is true fact. So here's where things get a little infamous, right? Off-season began. Munson was very vocal in encouraging Yankees owner George Steinbrenner to go out and sign free agent Reggie Jackson, who had spent that previous year with the Baltimore Orioles. But after Jackson was brought onto the fold, issues began to pop up for Munson. First, Munson was under the impression that he had a handshake agreement that he would remain the highest paid player on the team, despite any new signings. When his contract was bumped up following the signing of Jackson, it caused tension between Munson and Steinbrenner. When, during spring training, Jackson gave his infamous interview to Sport Magazine, calling himself the straw that stirs the drink, that naturally caused some tension between Jackson and Munson. Tensions between Jackson, Steinbrenner, and Billy Martin led to Munson and Lou Piniella having a midnight meeting with Steinbrenner in a Milwaukee hotel room in order to get the owner to ease up on Martin. The '77 season also saw, in an episode repeated a dozen years later with another team captain, George Steinbrenner's strict rules about hair causing problems. Munson grew a beard for about 2 weeks while the press had a field day with the story. Despite all this craziness going on and off the field, the Yankees and Munson were rolling on the field. Munson hit .308 with 18 homers and a third straight 100 RBI season. The Yankees returned to the playoffs once again and beat the Royals in 5 games to advance to the 1977 World Series, this time facing off against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Munson hit .320 with a home run, 3 RBIs in the 6-game victory over the Dodger team, although Jackson emerged as the biggest star with his dramatic 5-home run performance. '78 would be fairly quiet off the field for Munson as he hit .297 and 6 home runs and 71 RBIs. He was named to his 6th straight All-Star team. The Yankees again won the American League East, and although it took a tremendous comeback to catch the Boston Red Sox, beat them in a 1-game playoff, which we won't talk about. And the Yanks once again beat the Royals in the ALCS and the Dodgers in a 6-game World Series, with Munson catching the final out on a Ron Cey foul pop. In the postseason, Munson hit .302 with 1 home run and 9 RBIs. A World Series play from '76 to '78, he had .373 with 12 RBIs in 16 games to go along with a .339 average, 2 home runs, and 10 RBIs in the AL playoffs. That's what you expect out of your captain in October. 1979, Munson seemed to be on his way to another typical Munson season. He had .288 with 3 home runs and 39 RBIs through 97 games. In July, Munson purchased a Cessna Citation private jet. He had been flying since the spring of 1978. While flying that year, he had 2 small incidents in a flight from Seattle, Washington to Anaheim, California with Reggie Jackson and Craig Nettles. The emergency oxygen masks were activated, even though there was no problem with the oxygen supply. Days later, he offered to fly Billy Martin to Kansas City, Missouri for the All-Star break on his way home to Canton. On that flight, one of the plane's engines seemed to catch on fire. It was later discovered that the rotors had been installed wrong and caused the problem. On August 2nd, he was home in Canton on an off day. He went to the airport to run some touch and goes, landings and takeoffs. 2 friends happened to run into him at the airport, and he went up with them. On one of the landings, the plane was coming in short of the runway. Munson attempted to throttle up, but the engines did not respond in time, as jet engines do not respond immediately, and the plane was crashed. The two passengers attempted to free Munson from the seat but could not move him and were forced to leave him to save their own lives. Munson's official cause of death was smoke inhalation. The day of his death, it was announced that the Yankees would retire his number 15 and his locker. The team would add a plaque to Monument Park for him. His funeral was held at the Canton Civic Center on August 6th and attended by the entire Yankee team as well as luminaries from throughout baseball. Munson was survived by his wife Diana, two daughters, and a son, Michael Munson, who briefly played minor league baseball. So during his career, Munson was a 7-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glove winner. He had a well-publicized rivalry with Boston's Carlton Fisk, with the two both winning Rookie of the Year awards and dominating All-Star selections and postseason awards for catchers during the 70s. Munson first became eligible for the Hall of Fame in 1981 under the Roberto Clemente rule for deceased players and received 15.5% of the vote. 75% was needed, obviously, for election. He spent 15 years on the ballot and never reached the mark again. The consensus opinion was his career was simply too short to give him serious consideration. I disagree with that. Serious consideration is definitely needed for this baseball player. His case now is in the hands of the Veterans Committee, and he was on the ballot for the 2020 election, one of 10 candidates from the modern era. MVP, of course, Rookie of the Year, of course, 7-time All-Star, 2-time World Champion, and 3-time Gold Glove, as we mentioned, the number 15 for the New York Yankees. He was 32 years old when he passed away on August 2nd, 1979. Thurman Lee Munson, nicknamed Tugboat, Squatty Body, or the Walrus. 1,423 career games, 1,558 hits, 113 homers, 701 RBIs. Career batting average for .292 for a guy that was not necessarily known for his bat. He sure could do his part at the plate. So that's Thurman Munson, right? So we are going to get to one more here, and if you're still here, I promise you that this was not made to depress anybody. It's meant to shine a little light on some of these careers here. The big one of the 70s, obviously, was Roberto Clemente. If you're watching on the screen, nice 70 cards, 71, 72. He had 3 cards, his base card, his inaction, and his Game 4 of the 71 World Series 73 card, and I have the 75 card with Frank Robinson representing the 1966 most valuable players from the American and National League. This guy made some this guy was great on the field, and he was great on the front of Topps cards. Other than his first 2 cards, it's kind of suspect. This guy was, I don't know if there was a better looking baseball player than this guy. The charisma that exuded from his face, the way you could catch him in a pose. If you look at these cards from the 70s, 72 card is maybe one of the greatest poses of all time. Even when he wasn't posing, that 73 in action and that 73 World Series card. 72 in action and 72 World Series card, as well as that 73 final card, just absolutely amazing. Obviously, Clemente was one of the most beloved figures in baseball history, the Jackie Robinson of Latin players, and an icon in Pittsburgh, where he spent his entire major league career. Puerto Rico, where he was born and raised, and Nicaragua, revered everywhere, where he was taking relief supplies when he died. To this day, many Latin American players and others wear number 21 in his honor. During his career with the Pirates, Clemente amassed 3,000 hits and 4 batting titles. I believe he once said it's more valuable to his team for him to hit 320 something than it is to hit 30 home runs. He helped make the Bucs world champs twice in 60 and 71, dominating the 71 series for sure. Clemente was considered one of the greatest defensive right fielders in baseball history, due in large part to his very strong and exceptionally accurate throwing arm. He was recognized for his ability, winning 12 consecutive Gold Gloves, at a period of perhaps belatedly recognized prominence would begin in 61 and then only with his premature demise. Roberto was born in Barrio San Anton in Carolina, Puerto Rico, to Melchor Clemente and Louisa Walker. He was the youngest of 7 children, very impoverished childhood from what I gather. His father worked in the sugarcane fields. The family, due to their limited resources, also worked alongside the father in the fields, loading and unloading trucks. As a youth, Clemente was a track and field star and Olympic hopeful before deciding to turn his attention to baseball. He signed with the Dodgers on February 19th, 1954, and moved to Montreal to play with the Royals, kind of following in the footsteps of Jackie Robinson, right? He was affected early on by climate and language differences. Imagine going from Puerto Rico to April in Montreal could not have been easier. Completely different language. Flew right over the English-speaking folks and went to the French-speaking folks in Montreal. He received some assistance from bilingual teammates such as infielder Chico Fernandez, pitchers Tommy Lasorda, and Joe Black. They tried to hide him up there. If you weren't on the 40-man roster, and you could kind of be exposed to the Rule 5 draft, and that's exactly what happened. The Pirates made him their first selection in the Rule 5 draft that took place in 1954. So good old Bobby Clem spent less than a year in Dodger blue. And as I said, for all but the first 7 weeks of his Major League career, Clemente wore 21. First few weeks, he wore number 13 as his teammate Earl Smith was wearing number 21. That number later got reassigned to Clemente. And he had 21, retired by the Pirates for sure. He finished his rookie season with a .255 batting average. He was, remember, he was still pretty young kid at this point. So following season on July 25th, 1956 in Forbes Field, Roberto Clemente hit the only documented walk-off inside the park grand slam in modern Major League Baseball play. Obviously, I wasn't there, but I can absolutely picture this man doing that, right? What's more Clemente than a walk-off inside the park grand slam? Let's talk a little bit, fast forward to the back of his career here, 3,000th hit. Although he's frustrated and struggling with injuries, Clemente played in 102 games and hit .312 during the 72 season. He also made the annual NL All-Star roster for the 12th time. He played 14 out of 15 All-Star games. Remember those years where we had 2 All-Star games. And won his 12th consecutive Gold Glove. On September 30th, he hit a double in the 4th inning off John Matlack of the New York Mets at Three Rivers Stadium for his 3,000th hit. It was his last regular season at bat of his career. By playing right field in one more regular season game on October 3rd, Clemente passed Honus Wagner's record for games played as a Pittsburgh Pirate with 2,433 games played. In the NL playoffs that season, he batted .235 and went 4 for 17. His last game was October 11th, 1972, at Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium in the 5th and final game of the 1972 NLCS. He and Bill Mazeroski were the last Pirates players remaining from the 1960 World Series championship team. As we know, Clemente spent much of his time during the off-season involved in charity work. When Managua, the capital city of Nicaragua, was affected by a massive earthquake on December 23rd, 1972, Clemente, who had visited Managua 3 weeks prior to the quake, immediately set to work arranging emergency relief flights. He soon learned, however, that the aid packages were on the first 3 flights had been diverted by corrupt officials of the Somoza government, never reaching victims of the quake. He decided to accompany the 4th relief flight, hoping that his presence would ensure that the aid would be delivered to the survivors. The airplane he chartered for the New Year's Eve flight, a DC-7 cargo plane, had a history of mechanical problems and insufficient number of flight personnel. It was missing both its flight engineer and its co-pilot. and it was overloaded by 4,200 pounds. So it crashed shortly after takeoff in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Isla Verde, Puerto Rico, on December 31st, 1972. Again, this would be due to engine failure. A few days after the crash, the body of the pilot and part of the fuselage of the plane were found. An empty flight case, apparently belonging to Clemente, was the only personal item recovered from the plane. Clemente's teammate and close friend, Manny Sanguillen, was the only member of the Pirates not to attend his memorial service. The catcher instead chose to dive into the waters where Clemente's plane had crashed in an effort to find his teammate. The bodies of Clemente and three others who were also on the four-engine plane were never recovered. What does that say about the love for one's teammate that Manny Sanguillen would do that? Pretty phenomenal gentleman. In an interview for the ESPN documentary series Sports Century in 2002, Clemente's widow, Vera, mentioned that Clemente had told her several times that he thought he was going to die young. Indeed, while being asked by broadcaster and future fellow Hall of Famer Richie Ashburn in 1971 during the All-Star Game activities about when he would get his 3,000th career hit, Clemente's response was, "Well, you never know. If I'm alive, like I said before, you never know because God tells you how long you're going to be here. So you never know what can happen tomorrow." Humble man, that Roberto Clemente, right? On March 20th, 1973, the Baseball Writers Association of America held a special election for the Baseball Hall of Fame. They voted to waive the waiting period for Clemente due to the circumstances of his death and posthumously elected him for induction into the Hall of Fame, giving him 393 out of the 420 available votes. That's a 92.7% percentage of the vote. Clemente again was married in November 14, 1964 to Vera Zabala in San Fernando Church in Carolina. The couple had three children, Roberto Jr., Luis Roberto, and Roberto Enrique. They were born in 65, 66, and 69, respectively. Vera Clemente died in November of 2019 at the age of 78. He was obviously a devout Catholic and a caring man to all. 58-59 season, Clemente enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served during off seasons through 1964. He was inducted into the Marine Corps Sports Hall of Fame in 23 and the Puerto Rican Veterans Hall of Fame 15 years later. NL MVP award winner 1966, Player of the Month award May of 60, May of 67, and July of 69. World Series MVP in 71, Gold Glove winner 61 through 72. NL All-Star 60 through 67 and 69 through 72. Led the NL in batting average in 61, 64, 65, and 67. Led in hits in 64 and 67. Triples in 69. Putouts in 58, 61, and 66. And fielding average in 72. 13, he wore number 13 for a few weeks and then obviously moved on to the classic number 21. Made his big league debut April 17, 1955, again, age of 20 years old. Final game October 3rd, 72, as far as regular season goes. Man, what else can you say about Roberto Clemente? Batting averages of 351, 339, 329, and 357. Quite a player. So the big question I have is how long Roberto Clemente would have played for had he not perished in that plane crash. We don't know the answer. Obviously, I don't know if there's any kind of forensics into what his thought process was by his teammates or his family. He was 37 years old, and probably could have gone on for a couple more years. It's not unheard of. The Bucks were a pretty good team back then, so who knows how long he would have lasted. So thanks for hearing me out, folks. I appreciate it. I think it's important to go back in our history and dig up some information about these players that may have been lost to time. So obviously we know about the great ones like Munson and Clemente, but you know, a guy like Lyman Bostock deserves a proper the proper respect as well, even though he didn't have the longevity some of the other ones had. And Don Wilson too. Don Wilson probably would have finished with a better than average career had he kept going another 5 or 6 years. So that's that. Again, no disrespect, just just revisiting some people that we may have forgotten along the way, and who played the game that we all love and that we collect. So I thank you for joining me in my journey back in time here to the 70s. Reach out to me if you want at that 70s card show at gmail.com. That 70s card show podcast, anywhere you need to listen to that, obviously. And Twitter at 70s card. On YouTube as well, that 70s card show. I'm everywhere at this point. So thanks again for listening. If you're listening on podcast, I'm being played off right now to Mango Safari. And enjoy collecting and enjoy your collection. That's all I have to say. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.